Welcome to FE Fitness, and joining me today are James Cooper as well as Ian Lauren. James is our in-house nutritional manager and oversees most of our dietary programming, and Ian Lauren has a senior talent manager here in London and across the globe as well, who has some important questions to ask pertaining to how we could possibly get him and his clients into better shape.
The eternal question. So obviously in the industry that I work in, there is a massive focus on trying to stay in shape and as lean as possible. In regards to the fat debate, which always seems to rage, there are good fats, there are bad fats. How do I know what is a good fat and what is a bad fat and how to incorporate it into my diet?
James, would you like to start the answer of this question?
There's obviously different types of fats, three different main types of fats. There's polyunsaturated fats, they come from good quality fish, oily fish. There's saturated fat, which come from meat, dairy, and coconut oil. And there's also monounsaturated fat and unsaturated fat that come from olive oil and nuts. So what people thought was that all saturated fat was bad, right? Eating meat's always bad. That actually what new research has showed is actually eating carbohydrates that raise your insulin levels with those fats is what causes inflammation in your body. So saturated fats aren't seen as the bad guy anymore. So fats are actually good for you. Just eating the right quantity.
I think also the right quantity as well as the right combination of food sources.
Well, this is the other thing. So yes. There's this whole thing about combining the combination diet before. Can I eat fats with carbohydrates? How do I combine it and how do I put it into my diet in the place like, for example, you're supposed to eat carbs in the morning, that's the theory. So where do I put fats in my diet during the day and how do I eat it?
It's a very good question to ask, and it comes down to providing the body with a sense of satiety and blood sugar control.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need to exclude a macronutrient entirely from a meal, but rather reduce the quantity of that macronutrient behind a certain type of meal. And what I mean by that,
what's a macronutrient?
A macronutrient are there's three major macronutrients that we have access to: protein, carbohydrate, and fats as well. Okay. So we're just going back to your question where you asked whether or not you can combine carbohydrates with fats in certain meals and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. It would actually come down to firstly the quantity of fat, the type of fat contained in that meal, and also the source and type of carbohydrate behind that meal combination.
Okay.
So not to say that it's wrong, but it's just to say it could be misguided if you were to, as an example, take an abundance of refined sugar contained in Haribo sweets and then have pork crackling with it. It's not necessarily going to be the best combination.
So I need to cut that out as my evening meal.
Yes, please.
And your morning meal as well.
An afternoon snack.
And then, so do fats make you fat, essentially? And what do they do? What do the good fats do for the body and what do the bad fats do for the body? How does that?
An overabundance of fats circulating in the bloodstream combined... Any type of overabundance of triglyceride, which fats can be metabolized into if the metabolic effect isn't there for them to metabolize into hormones or other forms of immune system regulating compounds, can cause you to become fat if you elevate your blood sugar levels subsequently far higher than what they should be in relation to the high amount of circulatory fats. So to answer your question, if you're eating a diet with a high amount of fat intake, and all of a sudden you decide to have a soft drink that contains a lot of sugar,
sure.
Yes, you are going to have a greater potential to get fat from that type of diet.
Right.
However, if you were to have a diet higher in fat, control healthy sources of fat, and refrain from having high amounts
which is
of
like
sugar.
the coconut oil and whatever the James.
Well, I'd say olive oil.
But even with those sources, they're healthy and they're really good for your
too much of them again.
But too much.
Too many calories. It's true.
Too many calories, too much blood sugar can make you fat.
Okay, so during the course of my day, as a general spectrum, exactly how much fat should I be consuming?
James?
Yeah, so we're going to be massively dependent on your body weight. So the first thing to look at, we were saying, do fats make you fat? What makes you fat, whether people like it or not, is too many calories. People like to say, I can eat whatever I like, but because of the right type of macronutrients, the right type of food is not true. Eating too much of any type of food, even though it may be seen as healthy, is going to make you fat if you have too many calories. The problem with fats mainly is they're very highly dense in calories. So there's something called Atwater factor. So 4 grams of carbohydrates So a gram of carbohydrates gives you 4 calories, a gram of protein gives you 4 calories, but a gram of fats gives you 9 calories. They're quite calorie dense. Pardon?
More than double.
Yeah, more than double. It's quite calorie dense. So it's quite an easy way. So if someone eats a bag of nuts, right? It's very high in calories. They're healthy, but they will make you fat when you're trying to lose weight. So going back to your question again is, if you're trying to lose weight, there's 2 main things Justin and me always talk about. First thing is to be in a slight calorie deficit. Not a huge calorie deficit, but a slight calorie deficit. That's the number 1. Second, number 2, is controlling your blood glucose. So when you're having too high blood glucose, your blood sugar's going up. From mainly carbohydrate sources, your insulin goes up, which is a storage hormone.
And can you control your blood glucose level through fats?
Well, this is the thing, exactly. So quite often when someone's overweight, we'll give them a diet that's lower in carbohydrates and higher in fats, using fats as an energy source. The reason being is fats don't raise your blood sugar as much as carbohydrates. They still do convert to glucose when you eat them, but they won't raise your blood sugar as much.
As readily.
As readily, yeah, but slower.
Yeah,
So,
all macronutrients, regardless of their type, being proteins, fats, or carbohydrates, will increase the blood sugar concentration. Which also goes back to James' previous point on the quantity of fats that people consume.
Right.
Often we'll tell a client haphazardly in the past, without thinking it through, in our early days of our career, have nuts. It's a good substitute if you have a craving. And that client will come back and would have eaten 100 grams of nuts.
Right.
it's calories, exactly. Is the thing.
And then what happened with that is the fact that although the blood sugar may not necessarily increase as readily as having 100 grams of sugar, it still will increase insulin load to the point where it will dramatically increase blood sugar concentration to become somewhat unstable.
Right.
As opposed to if they would have 30 grams of nuts, wait an hour and a half to 2 hours, have another 30 grams of nuts, wait 2 hours, and so on.
And 30 grams, that's just like a small handful, right?
So a handful is a good size portion. If you're so actually talking about fats, portion size for having a meal, like you said, think about this, when a bigger guy is going to have a bigger hand, i.e. it's going to be a bigger portion, simple. So someone's going to come in that's this small with massive hands, going, I'll have a handful of nuts.
like Frozen Baggins.
Getting fat for some reason, what's going on? But actually, so a handful is usually a good amount for a portion size for an average.
What does it do for my body once it's in there?
Well, the thing is, the most important things that fat actually have is in terms of regulatory process on the body, are the fact that it can actually increase your recovery by reducing inflammation. It can actually increase inflammation slightly to the point where it actually increases your production of testosterone.
Right.
So just as James was mentioning before, initially a lot of clients will come into us and we'll give them a diet higher in fat to start off with. And that's predominantly the fact that most people working and living in the city, they don't eat regularly. And when they do eat something, they overconsume amount of calories. So they have no idea how to sustain the blood sugar throughout the day, but they also have no idea how to eat frequently because they don't have an appetite to do so. So by giving them a meal that has fat, it's far less quantity of food they have to consume.
And they can have it more regularly.
And they can have it more regularly without feeling completely satiated to the point
and
where
they're
nauseous.
What are we saying? Like how many
meals?
How long is the interval between each meal? And there should be a small amount of fat
up to
each
4
meal.
hours. Up to 4 hours is okay in terms of the gap between. It's particularly if your diet is higher in fat, you have that window for 4 hours until you really need another feed.
So every 4 hours, a small amount of fat with my meal.
So basically, when you eat a meal, you have something called absorptive state, is when you've just eaten a meal. That's when you're absorbing nutrients from your gut. So that takes 3 hours. And then a post-absorptive state, where your body is taking nutrients from your stores, your fat.
Okay.
So basically it takes about
it's
burned.
Right, okay.
So every 3 to 4 hours, your gut is empty and you've taken all the nutrients out of that food. So every 4 hours, basically keep your blood sugar stable.
Perfect. Well, that helps.
And then for the regulation of all that, testosterone production goes up, which means you lift heavier, you recover better, you get leaner, and you're just happier too.
That's exactly what you want.
Would it maybe what you want?
Final question is, would fats make you more handsome? I hope so. I need a lot more of those. But
I tried rubbing a lot of coconut.
It hasn't helped Justin and me.
I'm still doing it. Hopefully one day.
One day
it will work.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on board.